live for the Brewery Underground podcast.
In Nashville's harbor wise, cracked and bruised when we've disguised. Steve and Scott, they lead the way. Brewery Underground, night and day. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite. Raise your glass, let's ignite.
Hey, we are off and running here on the Brewery Underground podcast. Well, we're not exactly running, but Steve Scott. And Scott, there is something today that I right off the bat, I think, and I just said, because that's a crutch word of mine. That'll be edited out.
Right out of the gate. Out of the gate.
Maybe that'll be edited out. Hey,
You got it out of the way.
got it out of the way. We've been doing this podcast almost 3 years now. But
Coming up on it.
nothing is in comparison to the brewery Ska Brewing in Colorado. They've been around since 1995, bringing the history. Scott, bring in who we have on today from Ska.
We've got a guy, and I feel like we've talked to him for the last 5 minutes. I feel like I know him for a while now, and I feel like you're one of those guys who's got a great personality, and you probably hadn't met a stranger, which is a great thing. We've got Dave Thibodeau, who's co-founder, president, and operations of Ska Brewing out of Durango, Colorado. Dave, welcome.
Well,
Welcome.
thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. I want to give a little precursor how we got to connect with you. So we had on Emily Hutto, who know pretty well.
Yeah.
And then she kind of put us together. She goes, I know who you guys have to talk to next. And she put us in contact with you, and here we are, and which is great. We've met. It's kind of a networking thing. We had Brent on from Riverbend, and then we kind of met Emily through that, and then they put us in touch with White Labs and also you. So we've got this network thing going on where we've connected to
Great.
you, and this is awesome.
Great. Yeah, Emily's got a great network. She's a fantastic person. She now lives, as we were speaking before we hopped on, now she's in our neck of the woods. So, which, is a pretty rural neck.
Hey, girl. Well,
Describe that area if you don't mind. Durango, Colorado. Kind of tell us geographically where that is within the state.
Yeah. It's interesting. We're about a 6-hour drive from Denver. We're the far southwestern corner of the state. We're about 2 hours from Telluride. We're really close to the Four Corners, where you can actually stand in New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado in one spot. It's pretty rural. Our town's about 18 or 19,000 in the city limits and about 47,000 in the county. Purgatory is our ski area. Wolf Creek ski area is really close, and Telluride's the next closest. So we're out there. You got to go over some big mountain passes if you're coming from the north or the east. So
probably see a little wildlife out there too, I would
quite a
imagine.
bit. Yeah. There's it's not unusual for me to see on my Ring camera at my house, and I live right in town, for me to see bears, mountain lion, deer every day, raccoons, fox. It's crazy.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I think Emily said, if you had to go towards Denver or that area, you have to cross 2 mountain ranges or something. It's something crazy.
Yeah, you do.
Not an easy way to get there.
Pros and cons to that.
Mm-hmm.
Without
Well,
a doubt.
we do have to mention that Scott and I recently shared a beer that Emily had sent from Ska, and that was your West Coast IPA that we both enjoyed. We don't have any Ska on this episode tonight. However, I know I got something else. I have one of your stickers right here. How's
Okay.
that?
Well, I apologize for that. I know some was sent and it just hasn't got there, I guess.
Just
So-
hasn't
It's all
got here
good.
yet.
It's
It's
all
okay.
good. Yeah, it's all
It's
good.
okay. Look, I can pretend. Look, I've got the Ska koozie. I can pretend what's in here is Ska. Look.
Yeah. I've got some Ska, so I'll go ahead and start with I just had a West Coast. I had to kind of prime myself. Mid-afternoon, I'm low energy, and
Yeah.
it's 3:30 here. And so a beer at 3:30 pops me back into action. So
Yeah.
Let's
we
go.
go.
Round 2, baby. Let's go.
Well, we had the Ska in Scott's garage. He was actually brewing some beer recently, and I brought the Ska over, so we made sure we did a beer share on it at West Coast IPA, and it was really good. But
Thanks.
today on this podcast episode, I have something that was given to us by another podcast friend, Rich from the Foamy Heads. This is Creature Comforts. It is the Piano Keys, the Ale Sharpton, and yeah. I've been drinking this for a little bit now. It's an Imperial Stout, and it's pretty good.
Nice.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Steve started with like a 9.6.
Oh my gosh.
Starting big on this podcast episode.
I've got the and we've talked about this many times. Stokehouse, the original, and Dave, what's significant about this beer? It's made in Tennessee. It's right here in Nashville. They use Riverbend malt in this beer, so just kind of a connecting all the dots, kind of.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, I was actually going to ask you guys. I thought I knew that the podcast was from Nashville, but you guys had a central time zone thing on the meeting, and I was just curious if everybody was in the same spot or if you guys are in different parts of the country.
Yeah, he and I are just 30 minutes apart, so we're central. And I think when we put in Riverside, I think it puts our time. I assume it. When you see the invite, does it just say Central Time, or does it give your time?
Yes, and it says Chicago. So
I think we had confusion on that one. I think we were an hour off one time, or our guest was an hour off, but we made it work and it was fine.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a funny thing with podcasts and interviews. You're trusting the computer to do the right thing, when you accept anybody's invitation, and it doesn't always do the right thing.
I always worry about it because I look at it. You never when you book a plane ticket, you're getting ready to book a plane ticket. You make sure the date's right and the time of the date's right. And you look at it 100 times before you hit send or whatever. I do that with this thing. I'll look at the invitation 100 times to make sure the date's right. It's an AM or PM. Just making sure you got every detail is just right.
And I've still gotten it wrong. I've even shown up at the airport on the wrong day.
Well, the other thing is, at the time we're recording this, it kind of dawned on me today that you're from Colorado, and I'm originally from Cincinnati. You might see some of my obnoxious Red stuff back there. The Reds are actually playing the Rockies right now in a series,
Oh, no kidding.
the game will be on later. So who knows? Maybe, hopefully, it'll be a good game.
Where is the game? Where is it?
In Cincinnati.
It's in Cincinnati. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll say for the Colorado, they hit those 500-foot home runs out there, don't they?
Yeah.
Right.
Are you guys both Predators fans?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys got a pretty good team out there. You guys got a pretty good team.
I'm fired up about it. We have a team that's, I don't know. I'm not going to say much more, but I'm really looking forward to this next series. So,
and you won the President's Cup too, didn't you?
I think so. Yep. So
yeah, and there's been a curse on the President's Cups teams that win it, but you guys don't seem to be hindered by that at all. You're rolling.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know. That's never really been a Colorado sports thing. The random different curses. I mean, really, if you think about it, the Avalanche isn't that old of a franchise. I mean, it is. That was in early '90s, 90 or something. But Broncos, there just haven't been curses. I mean, we just kind of suck most of the time. But the Avalanche, they're just something else. And our Nuggets are having an okay season. There's some issues there, but they're squeaking along. They're still in the playoffs. But the Avalanche is, and I don't know. Hockey's just the funnest game. It's fun to watch, fun to play. I love hockey. So.
And when you get to the playoffs, it is a complete different. I won't say the energy is so much more. It's so much different. It is. It goes up a whole nother notch. Yes,
it's so amazing to me that hockey, the difference between the very best team and the second best team is, and it's always going to be one goal game. And it's like, how can the best team still win all the time? And then, a lot of that can go out the window in the playoffs. It's just because the energy is so different,
Yeah,
That's right.
Exactly.
And teams are different. If you have a success in the regular season, I think that's why the President's Cup winner is kind of cursed sometimes. Is because you're a different playoff team maybe than you are in the regular season. We have a great regular season team, and then maybe not built for the playoffs sometimes. But
Everybody's
you guys
coming
don't
at
seem
you
to be
that
having any
thing,
issues.
too.
I hope not. I hope not. I don't have any issues.
We like playing you guys because you whip up on us quite a bit. So every time you come here, so it's like, oh, we're going to lose 8-0 again.
You know, Dave, we have so much to talk to you about, but we don't want to miss out on a headline that just happened to you recently, and that was you all just won the gold at the World Beer Cup for True Blonde in the English style pale ale category. And man, can you talk about that? Because that had to be such a tremendous victory and achievement for you guys.
Oh yeah, it was. We were on a little bit of a drought. I think the last time we won was 2021. And it was True Blonde. I don't know if it was Great American Beer Fest or World Beer Cup, but yeah. So going, 4 or 5 years without winning one of those major medals, that's like it's kind of hard. You wonder if you'll ever win one again, and it's so hard to win right now. So like, there's breweries, like our good friends up in Golden, Colorado at Cannonball Creek, who win every Great American Beer Fest. They'll win at least one, if not 2 or 3. They won Small Brewer of the Year this past year. Those guys keep winning, but I think they're an anomaly for the rest of us, especially a lot of the legacy brewers. It's just so hard to win with 10,000 breweries out there, But this one was really kind of validating because it was the very first beer we ever made here in 1995. The very first batch of beer was True Blonde, and we've won, I think, 5 Great American Beer Fests, and this was our 3rd World Beer Cup with that beer. So it's just I think it's a testament to your flagships when there's a lot of noise going on and a lot of craziness and diversity, which I love. But I think, you don't ever want to give up on your flagships and get caught chasing too many trends, because they're there, they're solid. And True Blonde stays, we're not growing as far as territory goes, certain beers are growing, new releases growing for us, but that beer just maintains a rate of sale for us that is something we can depend on. And it's just been consistent and the same thing year after year after year. And, I don't know, it was really special to win again. And especially with that beer. And it's like I said, we were all in our tasting room watching it live. And, when you get through half of the competition, when you're sitting there watching it with a bunch of customers and stuff in the tasting room, and you haven't won, and you've gone through like 2 or 3 categories that you were entered in, you're just like, what? There's no fucking chance we're going to win anything, And then all of a sudden it happens, and like the whole place just erupts. And I don't know, it's a great feeling. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I'm still on a high from it.
How many breweries were you competing with in that particular style to win?
I'm going to say it was 73, but I might have just pulled that out of my butt.
Well,
I don't know
a
why that
lot.
makes it in my
We'll just
head.
say a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, in that category. So
Yeah.
the categories are all so big now, it's just crazy.
Well, that's got to give you such validation after 31 years. It's this consistent beer that you keep coming out, that you put out every year for 31 years. And not that beer gets dated, but you've seen breweries come and go, and you've seen beers come and go in these categories. And you're still doing it after 31 years with one of your flagships. It's amazing. And like you said, you get that validation, like, shit, yeah, we're still doing it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And and you see it with, I mean, it's cool with certain, like I said, legacy breweries or whatever. Breweries have been around for a while, and, some of their flagships just go away over time. And just knowing that this was we're never losing sales with it. It's always maintaining, and it's a really popular beer in our tasting room. Does exactly what we expect it to do out in the market. Maybe to its and our own detriment, we don't put a lot of effort into marketing it. And it's, but it just does what it does. It's a workhorse. And so it's kind of it's an approachable beer. It's in the English style pale category, and it's definitely more of an English style beer. I think our yeast strain is still the original Ringwood strain 1187 that we used in it on day one. And the recipes, I don't know that it's changed at all. If not, maybe a little slightly, like just there's some local honey in there that changes a little bit, so we got to do little tweaks, but not really a change. So it's cool. It is what it is. And there's not a beer I would rather win with is probably a better way to sum it all up.
Do you remember going back to like 1995 or maybe even a little bit before then when you started brewing this beer? Did you know instantly, man, this thing is going to take off? This is going to take us to new levels. And
No.
no, yeah, I mean, what was it then? I mean, was it just like, did you know, or did it take a while to figure that out?
No, when we opened our brewery, it was myself and my good friend Bill that started it with me. And my buddy Kyle, who at the time was the head brewer at the Wynkoop Brewing Company in Denver. We gave him like 10%, which we bought out long ago, but just to help us make the jump from home brewer to pro brewer, I guess. But we had no idea what we were doing. We came up with names before beers, just whatever funny name popped into our mind was the reason to brew any specific style. So we were coming up with basically the back of a napkin business plan in the local bar called the El Rancho Tavern down on Main Street in Durango. And we just wrote, oh, True Blonde's a good name. Let's come up with it. Let's do a blonde beer. So, and that was our first year. And then actually that same day we went to brew our second batch. That was supposed to be True Blonde, but this is how unorganized we were. I still remember this day vividly. We finished the first True Blonde and went to mash in the second. And halfway through mashing in, we didn't have the ingredients. So we were young punks and we were just like, we were excited and we just there wasn't a lot of planning in certain areas. And so the second batch actually became what was known as Pinstripe, which was our second longest brewing beer. It's still kind of one of our flagships. It's a lot more popular right in our backyard than in our other markets. But yeah, it was like we had no idea at all. And we actually served those first two kegs at the Telluride Blues and Brews Festival of True Blonde. And at that time it was called the Telluride Brewers Festival. And it was I remember because we met some cool brewers from Telluride, old brewery that's long gone now, that became dear friends of ours. And they were just like, something's not right with this. And yeah, there were issues with it. There were yeast issues. The yeast was not healthy. And I think it was a little bit oxidized and it had some diacetyl issues. And but 1995, young kids, basically nobody, and it was still novel. There wasn't, nobody knew anything, like nobody knew any better. So as the response was that it was fantastic. We knew something wasn't quite right with it, but we dialed it in with a little help from those guys in Telluride. And by our second batch, we were brewing a much cleaner, better beer. But yeah, those first two kegs, I don't know. We had no idea that we had no idea we'd be around 31 years later, let alone that very first beer.
I mean, you can honestly say that is a backbone, or at least one of the backbones of Ska Brewing is that beer.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep.
I'm excited
built
for
the
you.
brand, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for you. Just from that effort that you made way back when to now that you've won. The other question that I have is, starting way back when, 1995. I mean, craft beer started to become a thing. What got you? Do you remember really what got you into? I want to get into this craft beer thing and try to make a go of it.
Totally. I've told the story a lot, but Bill and I in we were good students, but we partied in high school, and so we were really into drinking beer when we were in high school, and we were actually in my dad's living room, my parents' living room, and we ran across a book, and on the spine it just said beer book, and it was like a 3-ring binder, and we were like, beer book, awesome. When we pulled it off, just because it was alcohol, we pulled it off the shelves, and we opened it up and we started flipping through it, and we're like, what is this? It's like pages of notebook paper, and we realized that it was homebrew log sheets, and my dad had been homebrewing, and this was in about 1985, and his first batch in that notebook was in 1969, and his last batch was 1980. So he probably quit right about when I might have started to notice what he was up to, because I would have been in like 7th grade around then. And we started flipping through that book and we're like, oh my God, he was actually making his own beer. My dad was making his own beer. And, 69, 8 years before it was even legalized.
Yep.
And
Yep.
well, we're flipping through it and we're thinking, like, where does he add the alcohol at? And that's when we realized he was actually creating the alcohol. And that was just a light bulb moment. And so we jumped right into it. And my dad got excited about it. He jumped into it with us. And so when we were in high school, there wasn't even a homebrew shop in Colorado yet. And so we started brewing with my dad. We bought all of our equipment and ingredients from a friend of his up in Wyoming, made a road trip up there. And you could buy malt extract in the baking section of the grocery store at the time. So it was it was very exciting, very cool. And that's what got us into it. And then it became our complete passion. And even through college, I was a communications major, and every project I did, whether it was a speech, a video, a technical writing paper, it was all on brewing beer. And so our dream was obviously to open a brewery at some point. And, we
Right
did it,
on.
very little money when we were still really young, and we had no business sense other than a couple classes in college, and had no idea that it would actually persevere. So it was, to think back about, like, we got in it at the right time, but it was weird. You couldn't just Google how to start a brewery, So
Right. And like you said, you're getting stuff out of the grocery store, but ingredients still just had to be hard to come by. There weren't,
Totally.
stores you could go to or stuff to order off the internet. Like, you probably had to scramble to find stuff.
Yeah. In fact, hold on one second. See if I got this here. I just stumbled across this yesterday. I've got it here. Maybe I got rid of it. Well, it was it was actually typed out on a typewriter, and it was a price book from my dad's buddy who sold the ingredients out of his basement in Wyoming. And we had this price list that was typed out on a typewriter, and he would send that to us in the mail. And then we would either drive to Wyoming to buy ingredients, or we would write him a letter and send him a check and he'd ship us ingredients.
So crazy. That's
Yeah.
so crazy. Can I ask what was your dad brewing? Was he creating his recipes? I mean, I guess he had to, because there were really no clones of anything.
And I have that beer book to this day. And the very first log sheet in 1969, batch 1, all it was yeast, sugar, water. And it was like, and there was one note: blew up all over the place upon open. That was the entire recipe and the entire.
Learning the hard way.
He was making prison juice.
Yeah, that also could have went the way of a still too. That could have been whiskey too at the same. If he had just.
So he got. I don't know if he ever even got a hold of the Complete Joy of Homebrewing, the Papazian book back then. But that was what we started with. And but yeah, his the recipes were very, very simple. They got a little more complex. He didn't even have hops in that first one. He had no
I was gonna say there's no. It's
just trying.
When he got back into it. When he got back into it with you guys, I can just imagine, like, his homebrew stories, like, because he probably was doing it by himself, or maybe with a couple of buddies. I bet he had some really great stories from those days.
Oh yeah, and I don't really remember, like, because he was, I mean, they had a lot of fun with it, and but they just never knew what they were doing, so they never really brewed good beer. So I don't think they got excited because it was delicious, But when he first started brewing with us, and later that same first year was when the first homebrew shop in Colorado would open up. And so we started talking to those guys and going to that and just hanging out there. And our beers got so much better, so much more quickly. And I remember Boulder Beer was one of those early breweries that you could get. I remember buying 6 packs of it in a wooden crate, and they had a little neck tag on each bottle that explained why there was sediment in the bottom of the bottle. And I remember my dad and I just thinking those were the most delicious things ever in the world. And he got re-hooked on it, and then started brewing much better beer. And I think it was exciting for all of us. He helped me with all my college projects, and it was cool.
Dude, what a great thing to do with your dad, right? And to know that he had done it before and you just kind of rediscovered this thing. That is so cool.
I have a two-part question. So the brewery equipment that your dad used then, and the brewery equipment that you were using when you first started, is it still around?
I think there's a good chance it could be there. We kept everything in the basement of my parents' house. They still live up in Denver. I'm actually headed up there tomorrow, so I'm gonna look. But yeah, and there was it was an unfinished basement, and it actually had a drain in it, and so we used to do everything there. But I remember starting a batch of beer and then going off to college or moving and never finish, leaving it in the plastic fermenter, in the bucket. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bucket full of moldy wort down there.
Can you imagine?
Probably so.
Somebody discovers that one day.
There's a good chance that some of that stuff could still be down there, just under our stairway, where we just kind of pushed everything away over the years because they've never finished the basement. So I'm gonna check. This weekend.
It'd be wild just to see, because I'm sure, even to today's, compared to today's stuff, it probably looks very primitive. Stuff they were using or you were using.
Totally.
Hey, you'll have to let us know. I'm really curious. I would
love to know what that is. That's a great question.
If you got the pictures and if you could send it to us, we would post it. We would. That would be awesome.
Cool.
That is
I'll check
cool.
That's
cool. Hey, before we go any further, what does that say on your shirt? It says property of Utica Club.
Yeah.
Are you talking? Wait, that's Saranac.
Yeah.
No shit.
You guys
Utica, New York.
You had FX Matt on the podcast.
Yes.
I kept seeing the top of that. I go, does that say Utica Club? And is it the same Utica Club? That is rad. That is awesome.
That was not intentional. It was just the hoodie I threw on. I went out there, and it's been quite a few years, but we were just on a road trip out there, and I had, through another friend of mine, actually my brother-in-law who works at Left Hand Brewing, he had met FX Matt, and somehow gave me his phone number and a brewer's phone number. And we were passing through Utica, and I just shot him a quick text or something. And man, they met us there and gave us a 2.5 hour tour. And yeah, what a cool story. What an old killer brewery. Have you guys been to the brewery before?
Not bad. Nope.
It's amazing. Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. They've got horizontal glass line tanks buried in the ground, that it's it is cool. It's late 1800s.
Yeah.
Well,
stuff.
And I was going to say that I'm not even so sure that Scott and I have had the opportunity on a podcast episode to talk about, he brought up the history when we had him on, but the one of the biggest things that amazed me was, you think of Prohibition, and they were able to get through Prohibition back in those days and reinvent themselves, and now it's fourth generation. Come on. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Utica Club was the first legal beer after Prohibition. It was licensed number 1,
No
the actual
kidding.
Utica Club. Yes, 100%. Yep.
When we were there, it was, like I said, it was quite a few years ago now, but they had just kind of started making it again. I don't know if it was ever out of production, but they were putting a lot of attention into it. And so it was exciting. So we drank a bunch of it while I was there, and it was exciting for them. And I don't know, nostalgia is a thing that I love. I love old stories. I love history, and especially beer,
Yeah, I was upstate New York back in October, and I knew of Utica Club, but never really had. Remember the old Doltz and Shuley commercials, and we talked a lot about that in the episode, but they were selling the Utica Club pretty kind of everywhere. You could kind of get it. You go into a bar and they would have it. So I'd had several of them over the weekend, and then I even brought Steve one back too. It's you got to have this. It is that nostalgia, but it's this is Prohibition beer, man. This is how they made this shit that long ago.
They had it was cool. We went to a couple little bars in town, and they still had old Utica Club signs, from way back. I don't know. It's cool. Cool town too.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got to see that. Is on my bucket list now, especially after talking to Fred. We were like, oh my god, that is just the history there is just it's amazing.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
one of the
saw that
things.
and I was like,
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say it's one of the things it's really been a joy when we do this podcast of hearing about some of the stories like that, and we know you have a lot of them as well.
and I love that you're repping another brewery. That's just cool. That is that camaraderie between breweries, right? And then you appreciate it. You guys have a pretty good history too. I mean, 31 years is nothing to sneeze at.
No, it seems crazy to me. It's like trying to measure. It's been well over half my life, and it just seems like I don't. Granted, the brewery's a different place than it was. Far different place than it ever was. It's a much different, bigger, newer building, and but it's really weird. To me, like when I walk in here, I still feel the same, and I I still feel like I'm that same age. I feel like a kid, and beer's still that exciting to me. And so I don't know. I love coming in here, and it is funny thinking about it. It's interesting, and I don't know if Emily told you this, but my two partners and I, my other partner Matt Vincent, he joined us after our first year. All good friends, and we're the same three owners all this time. But we sold the brewery this past year, and so I've been going through all our old corporate documents. I just found our original stock certificates that we bought at the office supply store and issued to each other just yesterday when I saw that typed out homebrew. I've been going through all that stuff in the last couple days just because it's all in boxes in my office. And I don't need all that old corporate crap anymore. It's corporate crap, whatever. But, I don't need the stuff from our original operating agreement or whatever it was, So I'm just cleaning out my office, but it's hard. I can only do it for about 15 minutes before I start tearing up.
Yeah.
Because it's so I don't know. It just means so much to me.
Yeah, it's something you built. I mean, it's your baby. You built it.
Yeah.
Is
It's
it
cool.
hard to pin down like of some of the stuff that you found so far? Is it kind of hard to pin down like two or three things in particular that you've come across where you're like, whoa?
Yeah. I mean, there's I was just trying to find that typewritten homebrew sheet, but I do have some of our homebrew recipes. This
Oh,
is
man.
our West 3rd Avenue coriander wheat recipe.
And you've kept them.
What's that?
And you've kept them.
Yeah, I can't get rid of this stuff,
Like, can you read the page you just showed?
Yeah.
The page you just showed, can you read a little bit or can you tell us a little bit like what the recipe was for that?
Yeah, so this was a coriander wheat beer, and this had to be, it was before we started the brewery, so it's probably 1994. 5 pounds pale two-row, 5 pounds of wheat. I wonder if we were doing full grain at this time. So yeah, 1/2 pound Crystal, 1/2 pound Munich. Let's see. Gosh, it's hard to. We added some gypsum at some point.
I love this.
Added water at 200 degrees. 5 quarts of water at 200 degrees, held at 155 for 15 minutes. I can't remember what our equipment might have looked like on any particular batch. Because my third partner that joined us, Matt, he ended up, I don't know if you guys know this company, but he ended up starting a company making depalletizers for canning lines called Ska Fabricating or Ska Fab, which he sold in 2021. But he just had an engineering mind. So every day we were like, every time we brewed, we thought of something cooler we could do. And we'd run to the hardware store and create a piece of equipment. And he actually turned it into a multi-million-dollar business, over the years. And he sold it and did really well. But it was that was all just because it wasn't available to us. So we would engineer it and create it. So our equipment was changing all the time. I remember making heat exchangers out of copper and garden hoses, in the hardware store. So I see we got some Irish moss in here. The hops looks like all Willamette hops. Oh, Mount Hood, and then coriander.
Did that particular beer make it onto your tap list at Ska?
No, it never did. And, I think I know why. Matt, my partner, him and his roommate that he lived with, this is when we first met him. We met this guy because in Durango, Bill and I, we didn't know him yet, but we were the only homebrewers that we knew. It was just the two of us. And we were doing all grain, and we heard about this kid doing all grain homebrew. And he was a punk kid, and he was with a bunch of skateboarder kids, and they all lived in one house on the other side of town. And we heard he was having a homebrew party, and he was going to have 3 kegs of his homebrew on tap on his kegerator that held 5-gallon kegs. And we just had one for an alt beer that we had just made. I even remember the beer. And we were like, let's just show up at this party with our own 5-gallon keg of homebrew, see what happens. And so we just showed up at the party, and Matt freaked out, and he was like, no way. And he threw it on tap, and then we all partied all night. And we had that kegerator, is a green kegerator that we had for years in our first tasting room. It was actually what we were pouring beers out of. And, but his roommate really loved coriander, and Matt didn't. And so he didn't like the beer because his roommate would put way too much coriander in it. And, coriander's got that effect still to this day. Cilantro as well. You
don't need
you
much.
either love it or you hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that. And so it was a no-go, even though he was forced to brew it every now and again.
Dave, you got to keep those sheets. When the Beatles were writing songs and they're writing lyrics down and they were leaving them all over the place, and people they didn't know what they were doing. People would come by them and just scoop them up. That you need to hang on to those.
I mean, I keep thinking about like there's the shows. There's one that comes to mind where people walk into a house and they go up to somebody's attic and they're like, "Wait a minute, there's Abraham Lincoln's signature on this document." And it's like, this is going to be you one day,
Yeah, I like this. Abraham Lincoln and the Beatles.
Yes. Hang on to it, man. You never know.
Hang on to it.
There's a thread there, though. I don't want to be assassinated.
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay. For anyone listening, Dave will probably just give it to you if you ask him for it. You don't have to shoot him over.
That's right. No, we want things to be celebrated with you from a historical perspective.
Dave said, "Hey, I'll just give it to you, man. You can have it." Hey, we've not talked yet. No, Ska Brewing, the name isn't just a random name. And actually, there's something behind it. And I didn't know this until kind of Emily started talking about you guys. And it's a whole style of music, right? So talk to us about how you incorporated Ska Brewing, Ska music. You guys are obviously fans of that style of music. Will you kind of tell us how that all came to be?
Yeah, you bet. It's I mean, that's the core of the whole thing, obviously. And it's when we were ska music, for those who don't know, it originated in Jamaica in the late 50s. And it's, without getting too complicated, it eventually evolved into what became known as rock steady and then reggae. So the roots of reggae is traditional Jamaican ska. But the trajectory of ska itself was, after that traditional kind of wave, which they called the first wave, it skipped the pond and caught on with working class black and white kids over in the UK, London area. And so they started forming these bands I hate to describe it this way because it's not true, and any purists listening would get really pissed off. But if you don't know what you're listening to, it sounds like fast reggae. And so it's got horns and it's really about where the beat falls. But these black and white kids, these working class kids in London and the UK, throughout the UK really, but London was kind of epicenter. They started forming these bands, and that became known as the two-tone era, with bands like the English Beat and the Specials, the second wave of ska. And then it kind of skipped the pond back to the United States and that was the third wave. And that's where it kind of started to merge with some punk rock. So it was like punk rock with horns, and you'd have this ska beat. But anyways, back to what it meant to us. In high school, we were really into punk rock and ska. our brewing regimen, it's like sports fans. Like, we're very superstitious about brewing. You guys might have some superstitions like throughout your procedure, however you go about making a batch of beer. There's probably certain things you're pretty particular about that are hokey, you know?
Right. Yeah. You don't
And
really
so,
want to say it out loud.
yeah, our two criteria every batch was we have to listen to ska music while we brew, and we have to drink the beers we're drinking have to be from the previous batch or the newest one that was ready to drink. And so those two things are what we always did. And then, back then it was nobody really, it was novel to have a bottle of beer with a label on it. Those were the early Apple Macintosh computers. And we were making labels and cutting them out with X-Acto knives, but we could print text in green or red. So it wasn't, we just had we made funny, silly labels and gave them out as Christmas presents. And we would always put, whether it was my kitchen or Bill's kitchen, Ska Brewing, brewed and bottled by Ska Brewing Company, Dave's Kitchen, Denver, Colorado, or Bill's Kitchen, Boulder, Colorado. And then when we actually got to the point, we're 10 years later where we're going to actually start a brewery, I was like, well, what are we, all the breweries at the time were named after mountains, rivers, or dogs. And I was like, well, what mountain, what are we going to call it? And Bill's like, oh, we're calling it Ska. We're not changing that. And I'm like, nobody even knows what that means, Some of the college kids for sure, but Bill insisted, and I'm glad he did. And so, yeah, we moved forward and called it Ska Brewing. Some of the, our first account was, one of our first accounts was off in the mountains by this reservoir in town and right outside of town. And it was a steakhouse, and it was a bunch of cowboys, that lived out there, and they were like guides and hunting guides. And those guys made up an acronym for it, and they told all their customers it stood for shit kicking ales. And it was just an acronym for shit kicking ales. So, we're in a rural area, a lot of cowboys here. So it's like half the town was college kids. They knew what ska music was. Half the town was cowboys. They thought it was shit kicking ales.
Hey, I
And
do
we've
want to
handed it
say,
ever since. It was like all we knew at the time, what we were really into was beer, comic books, and ska music. And so we wrote a comic book. All our characters were people from within the ska scene, and all our characters became like names of beers and labels that we still use to this day. True Blonde was actually the heroine character of the comic book. So pretty, and it was all ridiculous, but God, here we are somehow.
Yeah, and service, but so you kind of hinted on this. You've incorporated that into the brand. You've got labeling. You've got. We're going to talk to you about your website in a few minutes because that's a whole conversation because it's awesome.
yes, it is.
You've got that in there. So it's totally incorporated into the beer and the brand and the labeling and stuff. And I think that's cool. You're able to maintain that and have maintained that the whole time.
Yeah, I think it's I think that's one of the cool things. I mean, we talk about it all the time because you never want to lose, when you've been around this song, you don't want to lose any kind of culture you've created or authenticity. And it was like, man, it's kind of like, well, we have to just, stick to the comic book. It's like, and we actually, no joke, we go back to the comic book sometimes looking for direction. It's like, no, man, this is what it's about. This is what we're about. And I think, if there's one thing like millennials and Gen Z can sniff out, it's inauthenticity.
Yeah.
It's like when you're genuinely doing what you've always done and you're truly yourself, that goes a long way. And I think that, that's good advice, I think, for any brewer or any business person at all right now. And so for us, I feel really fortunate. At the time, I thought we were kind of really narrowing our market down to about as niche as it could get. Thought it was kind of a bad idea. And I'm glad Bill insisted because even though it's not, ska music isn't that well known, but I think if you get to know any of it and you get to know us as people and the character of the brewery, you can tell that we've done what we felt like doing all 31 years, There's no other influence out there, It's like we're just doing what we want to do, having fun doing it.
Wikipedia is not always the most greatest source for different things, but if you type in ska, Wikipedia has a whole page about it. You
Yeah.
gave it a whole much better presentation than Wikipedia would do. You know,
It's
yeah.
fun, danceable music, and there is a dance called the ska. There was an old classic album called Dance the Ska. We actually put out our own album called Drink the Ska.
I'm gonna
And it's
say
got
that
these-
looks very familiar. Some of that,
Yeah.
that
got these classic ska dance moves on the back. And those are actually employees of ours.
Where can someone find one of those records?
There's the record company that we did this with is called Jump Up Records, and they're out of Chicago.
Dude,
He
that's the
curated
coolest
half
thing.
the album. I curated the other half. It's cool because I've always been so into music, but I can't play anything. So now I've actually put out a record, even though
You've
I'm not
created
any-
something.
Anyway, so, but it's and so it's kind of it's the music itself is traditionally it was kind of a blend of R&B and like traditional Caribbean rhythms, and it kind of but it's very danceable and fun. You know, it was that two-tone era or that second wave was pretty political. Well, a lot of it has been very political, but also very fun and danceable at the same time. And that's where all the black and white checkers come from too. That
I
was the
love that.
second wave, and that's a unity thing between black and white kids that were in part of this movement. And for us, it worked great back in 1995 because there wasn't digital printing, and if you wanted to print stationery or business cards or labels, you know, printing just black on white was the cheapest way to go. So, you know, bonus points right there for the motif.
You mentioned early on that you like coming to work, and when you come into work, and it's, you know, you kind of feel like you're that age. Dude, you go to work, you're making beer, and you've got this music thing around you too. Like, it's got to be the greatest job on earth. You've got all these things around you that you just love, right? It's the music, you're playing the music, and it. How many people could say they like going to work that well? I'm guessing probably not many.
I'm pretty grateful. I've got to admit, you know, like selling the place, still getting to be here. I'm really glad that they just don't want anything to change. It's two local guys that bought it, and they're retired, and we've known them for a long time, and it's cool because they want me here, and they don't want anything to change, and I feel really fortunate because of that. But yeah, I mean, I just couldn't imagine anything else now. You know, for having one job for 30 plus years is not ordinary. and,
No.
and it's mostly because people get tired of it and they want to move on. And whether it's a brewery or not, I mean, maybe not everybody that jumped into the brewing industry in the last 15 or 20 years should have, you know, but for me, it wasn't ever a question. And, you know, I still believe very solidly in beer, and I know it's facing headwinds, and, but it's been very cyclical. I've seen it just in the time that we've had our own brewery, but over history for thousands of years, you know, it's gone up and down, and a lot of other trendy stuff is come and gone. And, so I really believe in beer and the magic of beer and the feel of a pub and all of it. I mean, the diversity of flavors and the things you can do with beer. To me, it's just so great that I mean, how could you not love it? You know, it's like, and just listen to us talking, you know?
Yeah, I know.
I think there was a point that I thought about in the beginning when we talked about your True Blonde. Scott and I have talked about this with other brewers. Certain styles of beer that are coming back now, lagers. Your True Blonde in 1995, and all of a sudden here we are in 2026, and it's it's still relevant to to this day. Maybe 10, 15 years ago people weren't buying as much. I don't know, but here they are today, and it's winning awards.
Yeah. I think it'll be cool to check, like, let's see what happens over the course of this month since the World Beer Cup.
Sure.
You know, does consumption of it go up? I mean, it seems like there's been a fair amount of attention around it. I feel like between the GABF and the World Beer Cup, we had a bit of a lull, like maybe, I want to say maybe, I don't know, 7-8 years ago till 5-6 years ago. And then since then, I feel like I get really excited again about not just us winning awards, but any friends winning awards, and it's starting to get attention again. And so I wonder, if we're going to get any legs out of that, particularly in our tasting room. Our sales going to go up in the tasting room. So in the next few weeks, we'll be watching that to see, if it makes a measurable difference. But yeah, I mean, you're right. And those styles, I mean, as excited as I am about something like our West Coast IPA, our older real flagship Modus Operandi, another IPA, like an original old school West Coast IPA, is still hanging in there. It's our second strongest selling beer. And it's kind of those, I think, yeah, and like you said, the lighter lagers coming back. And I love that because it kind of, it just shows you what really can stand the test of time and maybe, I mean, for us, there's certain beers and trends that we've jumped on board with. There's also other things that we haven't. Hazy was one where we were kind of divided when hazy IPAs first started, but some of us insisted on it, really liked them. Some of us swore we'd never like them. And that's one of our best selling beers, just our main hazy IPA. But we never got into like milkshake IPAs,
Yeah.
Juicy IPAs that tasted like juice. It was never a thing we wanted to do. And so, yeah, I mean, once again, it's another validating part of this conversation and what has happened. Like, I love seeing classic styles come back, and they always do, you know?
See,
Well,
you guys have been
Yeah.
around long enough. You've got that history. We're talking to Fred. Matt was the same way. It's like you've been around long. Now you're starting to see those cycles start coming back, right? And you like, hey, if you can weather the storm, or hey, this thing's a trend that's going to come back to whatever. You've been around long enough to see those things.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we can track it in our own numbers, we've seen it just within our own brewery come and go, and those styles, they come back, and they always do.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, and it's, I don't know. I mean, I love that. I love it because there's still, I think, I mean, I'm drinking mostly our West Coast, like day to day right now. That's what I've been drinking at the end of the day in our tasting room. But our older IPA and blonde are beers that they're go-tos for me, at home on the weekend, whatever it is. That's what I've always got a nice stash of. And I don't know. It's great. It's like you said, it's cool to see that it does come back, maybe we'll see. There's a lot of, a lot of stuff like that, I guess, in life where it's the old stuff was cool for some reason at some point, and now everyone's starting to realize why again.
Well, and I think it's good to touch on this because last year for your 30th anniversary, you had brought back some of your flagship beers. You did it each month. Are there certain beers and certain ones, kind of going a little bit what we were saying before, that really had some special meaning to you that you were able to bring back last year?
Yeah, there was two. When we first started, it was I'm kind of glad you asked that because it's fun to think about. But when we first started, and I remember like some of the brew pubs that kind of created a chain, like Rock Bottom, for example.
Yeah,
And friends
they were
working
here in
at
Nashville.
back then. And their MO when they would open a new brewery, and this is mid 90s, I don't know after that really, but they would give some freedom to the brewer, but they were like, you got to hit this color spectrum. You got to have a light looking beer. You got to have an amber beer. You got to have a brown beer. You got to have a dark beer. And so that was kind of our mentality when we started, because that's what we got from other people that were already out there doing it. And that is how we came up with Blonde. And then Pinstripe was our red beer. And then we had two other beers, Buster Nut Brown and 10 Pin Porter. And both of those beers we brought back last year during our 30th anniversary. We were bringing a new one back every every month. And it was, that was those two in particular, just because they were part of that original lineup, really fun to bring back. And what was cool about it was a lot of people that have long since left Durango, saw that we were doing it on social media and started chiming in about how that was their
Oh,
favorite beer 25 years ago, or whatever. And we even had a funeral. When we retired those beers, at that time, it was kind of a big deal to retire a flagship. So we actually had a funeral for 10 Pin Porter, and we all were wearing dark suits, and we had a little casket. we buried it. We buried it in our beer garden. It's still buried out there. It's all on, you can see it on YouTube, the 10 Pin Porter funeral. And it was like, I mean, those beers meant so much to us, and it was the first half of our existence. They were our bread and butter. And so bringing them back last year and then having all those other people once again tied into the nostalgia that had fond memories of drinking those beers. Or I really love, that's the beer that got me into craft beer.
yeah.
All of that. So
What made you retire like permanently some of those beers where you're like, this isn't going to be our core beer because you've had some on your tap list for a long time. I think Scott's
yeah,
going like money.
that's it. Do they really
Yeah.
sell that much? And
Yeah.
like the styles come and go. Like I feel like we could do pretty well because some of our darker beers, porters and stouts over the years have been delicious. And I think, they just didn't sell enough to work into our production schedule the right way. I have a feeling some of those darker beers might be able to make a triumphant return in the coming days. And I think because that's what I'm drinking now. Like when I go to a new brewery, a brewery I haven't been to yet, I'm trying to find a porter or a stout. And it's kind of just because for so long, I'm definitely a hops guy and I love IPAs. For so long, I just go, IPA is just a go-to. And now I'm like, man, I'm really enjoying something with a little malt and some darker malts and a little less hops. And I'd love to bring back some of those beers again, or at least a twist on those beers.
Do you pull out the notebook for those you literally pull the notebook off the shelf and start shuffling through recipes?
We do. And it's funny because I have my own notebooks that actually have notes about why, but then our brewers have they have the old recipes, and it's funny because I look through my stuff and it's like, well, this is what we were doing. This is why we were doing it. This is why I'm on the kind of more on the marketing side. And so I was always into like the labels and the comic book side of everything. And so I look back through that stuff and like, what made us think about this? And God, how can I get that creative again? I got to spin off of this somehow,
Yeah. As the brewery grows over 31 years, you start out as kids and we're just going to make some stuff and we start this brewery. But then after a while, you got bills to pay, right? And you got beer, you got to sell things so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we have to shift mentality at least a little bit, right? We have to sell beer. We can still make the fun stuff, but we want to stay in business. We have to do this business thing too, right?
Yeah. It was really apparent like when that day kind of hit because, like I said, we had blonde, red, brown, dark, and then those all worked because it was all new to everybody. Craft beer was, and there's all these, you're learning these styles, and then certain styles definitely started to grab hold. And then when craft really started taking off in the early aughts, mid aughts, and diversity started going crazy, then it was kind of like you couldn't just survive on porters anymore. There's definitely exceptions. Black Butte from Deschutes, for example, still their flagship to this day. And it was kind of but I remember, I don't even know if Duck Rabbit Brewing, do you guys remember those guys? Are they still
I do. I think I see them from time to time. Yeah.
They were all stout, It was we just never had them out in Colorado. So now it's hard for me to know, what breweries are still around because unless they're distributing, there's so many. unless you're distributing nationally, it's hard to tell. But
Yeah.
some of that, and then I've seen other breweries that concentrated on one style of beer, and that's hard. I think we have a good example, Bierstadt Lager House in Denver, that focuses just on German style lagers. That's really purist and specific about it, and they do a great job. They were definitely for a while a brewer's brewery, like brewers wanted to go there and drink, but they don't stray, and that's an example of where I think it's really worked over time. But there's been a lot of breweries that have had a concept from opening that I'm only going to make this style of beer or that style of beer, and that doesn't stick for very
No.
long.
Can you give a ballpark estimate from when you started in 95 to now, how many different beers have you brewed?
Oh God.
I mean, I'm not asking like the exact number, but just like a ballpark.
We have, like, right now we have 20 taps in our tasting room,
Okay.
and they're always full. And we have a new beer in our tasting room, not necessarily a distributed beer, every Friday. So, but for those first 10 years, it was really only 4 beers. I mean,
Okay.
we have occasional one-off batches, and we do special beers for certain events. But God, in the last 15, 20 years, I can't even, so many different kinds of beer. And we have a 3.5 barrel system as a R&D or a pilot system. And then we have our big system. And so we're always messing around on that thing. And a lot of those beers are just in our tasting room. But man, I mean, my guess is maybe not into the thousands, but hundreds and hundreds for sure.
It's a lot. Still a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of history, my friend. That's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
history.
There's a beer on your tap list right now, and the reason it stood out to me is because of the ABV, and it's called a West Easy Light Lager, and it's 3.8%. Obviously, it's in the description. It's a light lager. Why are those like low ABV and maybe even mid strength? Maybe it's in that range too. Why are those important? I know we talked about lagers in general, but why are those low ABVs important to people? And why have one on draft?
Yeah, this is definitely an experiment for us. I've always thought we were really good at brewing clean, light lagers. Like we started brewing a Mexican style lager in 1999, and it's our best selling beer. And it's won a bunch of awards, and it's something I'm super proud of. And we've always been, I think that our lab and our quality control is a big part of that. Because obviously it's hard to make a beer like that. I mean, you can't mask anything, and it's got to be. And then once you take it to a level where you've got a really low ABV, you don't have anything helping you out on the shelf at all. As far
Right.
as ability goes. But anyways, it's I think a lot of it is, ours is interesting because we're branding it a bit different than the rest of our lineup. It doesn't look anything like our regular Ska beers. The price point's also quite a bit lower. It doesn't cost nearly as much to make. And so we're almost looking at it like it might not even really, sure, it's made by a craft brewery, but I don't know if it even really, depending on how you're defining it, if that's where it fits. So we're positioning it to sit on the shelves with Coors Bud Miller. But we'll see how that goes. That's an experiment. But back to just low ABV and mid-strength beers, I love to see the mid-strength beers that are still a particular style, not just a light lager, but like IPAs or whatever. Even though we kind of went through a phase of session, it's a little bit different now. Maybe it's a little bit more accepted, but it's interesting because I think what we're seeing is a reaction to Gen Z not drinking as much. People our age, a lot of my friends that probably kept us in business all these years, don't drink half the amount of beer they used to. And then there's trends like zebra striping. Are you guys familiar with zebra striping, where you where you drink an alcoholic beer and then you drink a non-alcoholic beer and then you drink well, you alternate. Yeah.
Where is that becoming a trend at?
I think it's just a thing. I mean, I don't know, but it's kind of people trying not to get hungover, but still want to go out or still want to have some beers. And
Okay.
so older people, and then I think younger people, millennials, I think are pretty solid consumers, but they're very, they have a lot of information coming at them digitally about health, and so it's easy to spin somebody's outtake on beer or whatever. And I think lower calories, less gluten, less alcohol, all of those things, less carbs. Those things are all, there's definitely segments among beer drinkers and craft beer drinkers that are appreciating beers that take that into account more so than they ever have. And that's where you're seeing a lot of the growth right now. I just was reading an article that the BA put out today that mentions Founders and Harpoon and their lower ABV, lighter beers that they're coming out with. It's a good article. It's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Just at the Brewers Association. But for us, it's interesting. We had a lighter, lower ABV beer called Ska Lager that we had out for a couple years. We discontinued it last year. And our employees that drink a lot of beer, especially the brewers, they'll taste and drink all of our higher ABV beers. But when they're just sitting there in the tasting room, putting one down after another, that's what they were drinking. And it's just because they're going to get up and come to work at 4:30 in the morning or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they're younger, and it's like they could put away quite a few more beers and still function the next day than I can. So for me, it's difficult because it's not my kind of beer. I still like hoppier, little bigger beers and darker beers. I don't like light beers that don't taste like a lot, even though I appreciate the difficulty in brewing them. But it's something that's impossible to ignore when you're a brewery, I think, our size. It's happening. Kind of branding the West's Easy Light different than all the Ska stuff it's a little bit of an experiment as sort of a sub or off brand that I don't know how it's going to go. And we're not releasing it market wide. We're just releasing it in the southern part of Colorado out of the gates to kind of just see what happens. But already our crew, our actual employees are drinking a ton of it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was going to be a question of mine. Could you have even predicted like 5 or 10 years ago that, at your place, non-alcoholic and what you're doing also like some of the CBD sparkling seltzers. Could you have predicted 5 or 10 years ago that, hey, this is what's going to be a trend in 2026?
It's interesting because one thing we do have is we have a non-alcoholic, just flavored sparkling water called Skagwa. We've been making that for years and years, and that actually stemmed from one of my partners getting a DUI when we were much younger, and we drank a lot of beer while we were working when we were younger. Probably not the best idea, but we didn't know any better, nor did we care. And so he got a DUI and he couldn't drink anymore, but he wanted a bubbly beverage in his hand. This is before LaCroix, we didn't even know about that. And so we started like just carbonating water and then adding a little cranberry or a little lime. And we always had it on tap in the back so we could have something to drink other than beer for years. And then people started coming, and we had it for free in our tasting room. Like you could just go fill your own glass up with a tap just on the wall in the tasting room, any customer. And people started coming in and filling up jugs full of it, and jugs and jugs and jugs full of it. And we should start canning and selling that stuff. And so that's how that happened. But then we also got into CBD, and we've recently gotten into the THC game, very low dose THC sparkling beverages. And it's just for an alternative, and none of us are into non-alcoholic beer here. We appreciate it. We do sell it here, but we don't. It's not our beer.
Right. It's not for
Just
you, right?
offering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's kind of the stuff that we can sort of appreciate, like these THC drinks that we make. It's only 1.5 milligrams of THC in a 12-ounce can. It's called Ska Low Dose. And those I'm having a good time with. It's fun to have one of those instead of a beer. Um, Nothing higher than that as far as milligrams of THC, but that's really been pretty enjoyable for me. Once again, non-alcoholic beer. I can't see a day when that's something we do, but back to your original point, no, 5 years ago, it was a conversation we probably had. 10 years ago, definitely not.
Right.
But it's now, and actually we were just looking at the numbers today. Our beer numbers in our own tasting room aren't up, but our numbers on all of our non-alcoholic beverages are up in the tasting room. So it's interesting, and I said it again. I said it to our whole team today. I believe in beer. There's more people coming. We have a lot of tourists that come here. It's Durango's a big tourism area, and it's very seasonal. So we kind of have to have a lot of offerings, at least because we're a full restaurant now at our world headquarters, or that's what we always refer to it as. But
Yeah.
we have it not necessarily for distribution or a real true revenue generator outside of Durango, but just to offer some diversity for those types of customers here at our brewery.
What that tells me, at least in my mind, is you're going to get the people that are going to go to the brewery anyway. Like you've got a group of people, right? And then somebody in there doesn't want to drink or is the designated driver or doesn't want beer, but you've got an option for them too. So you get your beer drinkers in there, and then you got the other people that are going to come that might not have come in otherwise because you didn't have something for them, whether non-alcoholic or THC or something. So the spike in that kind of tells me you're getting those people too, obviously, right? Those groups that are coming in.
Yeah, and that's our intent, for sure here. And it's like, whether it's I think we try to stay pretty true to where our soul is as far as to what we actually make and brew, but like non-alcoholic beer, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus here, but I still haven't tasted one that tastes as good as the version of it with alcohol in it would breed well.
Imagine
And,
that.
So I don't get the point, but it's kind of like a lot of people do because it's close enough, I guess.
Right.
And,
Well,
and
I don't like it, but I
mentioned-
understand.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And so you're right, though. I think, we want to offer something to everybody. If they've got a friend, I think I always look at it like hopefully the driving decision maker in the group is probably the person that wanted to have some of our beers, but then can we accommodate all their friends? That's what I hope we can do.
Yeah. You'd mentioned earlier that Mexican lagers was one of your first ones that you started brewing, and it's something that Scott and I, when we go out, we hit breweries, we've noticed probably over like the last 2 years or so that every brewery now, especially this time of the year, they have a Mexican lager. Do you feel like you were a little bit ahead of the curve on that one way back in the day?
I feel like I didn't see another one from a craft brewery for at least a decade after we started brewing this. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we started brewing it in 1999, and it was, to be honest with you, we were closet Pacifico drinkers. We used to, I mean, we would go to festivals and we wouldn't sit there and drink all the craft beers. We'd go back to the truck or the car and drink a Pacifico and then go back out or pour it into our glass. And then finally and then that's what we would drink in the summer in Durango. It gets pretty hot here, and craft beers were not really light at the time. Lot of flavor, not the cleanest, lightest beers coming out of craft breweries in the mid to late 90s. Finally, we were just like, why don't we just try to brew one of these ourselves? And so we got a yeast strain from Mexico City, and we put a little dextrose in there and made a lighter beer, and it it stuck for us. I mean, I remember going through the labeling issues that the TTB didn't know what to do because we just called it Mexican lager, but it wasn't made in Mexico. And at that time, you weren't getting your labels approved online. You had to do it through snail mail. So we'd get a letter back saying, you didn't make this in Mexico. It's not a Mexican lager. So then it ended up being a hyphenated Mexican style lager. And it was all this rigmarole to finally get it to where we could put it in a bottle. And at the time we were all bottles. We weren't cans yet, but yeah. And then I really feel like it wasn't till, I mean, a decade later would have been 2009. So, I mean, still that's 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It-
it's funny because Scott and I will go out. He could talk about this, but we go out now, especially this time of the year. We're like, okay, they got the Mexican lager. We got to try it, right? I mean,
Jeez,
we do that
we
a
went
lot.
we went on a trip last year and we went to eight breweries in a row had a Mexican lager and we got
No
one from each
kidding,
one
huh?
of them. It was like, yes, this was awesome.
But it
Yeah,
wasn't that
that's
way
amazing.
years ago. Now everybody has a Mexican lager, and it's the same thing that everybody keeps saying. You can't hide behind them. I mean, there's a reason why they're there, and if they're not going to be good, man, it's not going to reflect well on you.
No. Yeah, I remember like when we first made I remember bringing it to a couple of specific festivals and we just embraced throwing a lime into it. Like we were always just trying to be irreverent all the time, like just do whatever the fuck we want. And regardless of what anybody else is doing. So we would show up at festivals, in 1999, 2000. And that was when everybody was anti-fruit in beer. And we'd show up with this light beer and a big old bowl of cut up limes. And brewers would come like to taste it. And no way would they put a lime in it. And we were just doing it just to kind of spite everybody. And every year we sold more and more and more. And then it became, and we were only brewing it in the summer. It was seasonal for us until just a couple of years ago. And it started to almost eclipse modus operandi when it was only available for 4 months of the year. So it was in 4 months, we were selling as much of it as we were selling our main flagship throughout the whole entire year.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we switched and we started selling it year round. It's definitely our best selling beer that we have out there. And, and it's for us, it's great. It's got good placements in like the grocery stores and in Durango where we live, it just means summer here for everybody. That's what I miss about we used to have a kickoff party when we would release it every summer. And it was kind of like the unofficial start to summer. And now that we have it year round, we still have a party, but it's not really the Mexican lager party anymore. It's just a summer kickoff party, but
Right.
it's
Because
kind of
you could buy it yesterday at the same also, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, it's always been a fun beer for us. And I kind of love telling the story, and I'm glad to see more. And it's interesting because they don't all taste like ours. We used to just always put this in the international Pilsner category because there wasn't anything any better for it. We didn't brew it for a category, but we'd like to enter it. It's done well. And now it's like when you are really tasting some of those older Mexican lagers that are truly derived from like German Viennas and whatever. And, that are, I don't know that ours is the closest representation of some of those beers that I've tasted, because I've tasted some that are really, really close and really, really delicious. I think ours is a little bit different. I love what it is, but it's really weird when you have a beer that light, how much variance is there from brewery to brewery. And it turns out there's actually quite a bit, and
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It's a hard beer to make. And so I like to drink them when I go to other breweries as well. But boy, when you get one that's not clean, it's Pam.
And you're right, that 8 breweries in a row I was talking about, they were different from brewery to brewery, and none of them were bad. But they
No.
did vary, and it was like, how could it be different? That much difference between them, but they were all fantastic, and maybe some had some more corn notes or whatever it was, but they were all good. But they were all different.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's pretty
it's
remarkable.
crazy. We didn't have any kind of clone recipe. We just made it up when we started. We just had the yeast strain. And that's what we've stuck with all these years. So if you're really trying to replicate Pacifico or whatever it might be, ours probably isn't the closest representation out there. In fact, I know it's not, so
Hey, speaking of lagers, you do a German style lager, Oktoberfest, and we're not going to be that far off from Oktoberfest season. Can you talk about that?
yeah, that was another one that another one I'm really proud of. I think it's because it's so seasonal, it's so limited. That's probably my favorite beer that we make. Um, and I think we originally came out with one. We brewed one years and years ago and it did okay. And then, and there were a lot of breweries making an Oktoberfest long, a long time ago. And then there was this big lull where it just kind of stopped happening. And I didn't see as many available on the shelves here in Colorado as I used to, but always loved the style. And so we just decided, let's just go all in, get all of our distributors on board, get all pre-orders for this beer. This was 2017 or 18, I think. And just make an Oktoberfest, get the can. It's always, this is kind of an interesting thing, but there's a minimum quantity order if you get a true digitally printed can from, the big can manufacturers like Ball. And if you're not going to sell that minimum quantity, then you pretty much are labeling your cans. And we decided to go for it with a cool matte finish, use this old label from the first time we made one years and years earlier, probably 2 decades earlier, and reinvent the beer, totally new recipe. And man, we won multiple gold medals. We won Brussels won a gold. We won gold at GABF that year. And we were so proud of it. And it's I don't know, it's a beer that our whole team, because we're already talking about brewing it, even though it's only April.
Yeah, yeah.
We only brew a couple batches, if even that. And it's limited, it's just get it out and it's done. And you got to time it right, but the longer it can lager, for the most part, the better. And so it's yeah, we're already talking about fitting it into the production schedule.
Yeah.
And but man, it's like when we come out with that beer, it's not unlike, it's a similar beer to, we've also done a Mexican lager dark that we kind of discontinued, but we might do again this fall. They're very similar recipes, actually. It's all German roots, and but it's those beers that are kind of clean lagers, but with a little color and a little bit of a malt backbone, I think brewers in general eat it up, not just us, but those styles. Yeah, I think they're, I think those are the types of beers that brewers really, really appreciate when it's really well made. It's a beer I'm really proud of. And I once again, that's a big part of when fall rolls around. Everyone can't wait to be drinking that again here at the brewery. Fun beer.
When do you try to drop yours, and do you take into consideration, a lot of breweries drop in stuff early, or do you kind of hold back a little bit, or when do you drop yours?
By the
Yeah,
way, can I interrupt for a second? This has
Yeah.
become a big thing with Scott and I, the conversation about Oktoberfest, because every year we text group of friends going, "You see Oktoberfest yet? You see it?" It gets earlier and earlier every year.
What's the stuff at the grocery store?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I don't think a lot of people really realize this, but it's a difficult puzzle. You don't want to come in later than a lot of other breweries because people just go for it when they first see it. And it's only going to be a one-time purchase for a lot of people. So you kind of got to be at the forefront. At the same time, Oktoberfest, as we know, actually it takes place in September. So you don't want to come out with it so early that you don't have any around when it's truly Oktoberfest season. And then you got to take into account how long it takes to get to your distributors and how long it takes for your distributors to get it to the retailers. So it's a puzzle. And then if you have any still left at the end of September, when you hit October, you'll have some trickling sales. Come the end of October, though, you can't sell it anymore. So you got to run out before that. So we usually try to get it out. Every year, it seems like it's a couple days earlier, I think towards the end of July, sometime in July is when it'll probably get out there. And that gives it, the whatever's left of July and then all of August before it's truly Oktoberfest season. So it depends on how much we make. And, that was always a complaint of mine too. Like, I'm not drinking that stuff in July. It's made for July. There's a reason it's not out in July.
Right. And I always blame, with good or bad, and I always joke when I say blame, but it's Sam Adams' fault, right? It's Sam Adams did this thing. They did it. Good or bad, they did it. This stuff starts showing up in mid-June.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you're fucked.
I'm exaggerating.
You kind of got to do that.
Yes. Are there any? Yeah. And are there any Oktoberfest events that either at the brewery or around Colorado that you all are involved in around Oktoberfest season?
Yeah, there's some small stuff around the Durango area. I don't think we do different things like with certain retailers. But we're not in any big like Oktoberfest festivals. I really want to throw one ourselves in Durango where we have different versions of German beers and like people have big tents and we get the mayor to come, tap a barrel. And it's always been kind of a dream of mine to create something a little more authentic, but Durango style, and invite all our friends that make well-made German style lagers and particularly Oktoberfest. But it's there's nothing huge, just some small things, but there's room for it. It would be great. I think it'd be a lot of fun. We do try to get a polka band, so come play at the brewery.
Awesome.
It's Steve. We love that time of year. Just the beer, the transitioning. It's just maybe the weather's changing a little bit. It's just that whole feeling of fall is great, and those beers come out, and you get a polka band going on, and you're just in the mood.
Well, I always say for beer drinkers, it's like Christmas, right? It's the most wonderful time of the year, and it's kind of like between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that's sort of the traditional Oktoberfest season lasts about that long too, and then boom, it's here, and then all right, bye-bye, and as you said, I mean, if you're going,
maybe that's it. Maybe it's just because it's so fleeting that it's so great.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I would love to sit there and drink a lot of Oktoberfest, and I do. If I'm going into a brewery, unless it's a brewery that's serving Oktoberfest all year long, if I'm going into a brewery and it's, mid-November, I'm going, I don't know. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, it's interesting. And we usually, because we fill our pipeline with it, and then we usually have another batch going. And then that's what's going to possibly go on through October. And so the beer is still plenty fresh into the next year. But regardless of what the best buy date on the can is, the consumer is just seeing Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
And that just means, and it's funny because, we take it for granted because we live it, but most people think Oktoberfest means October and, just the general person out there. So, for it's still good. Like October still works. Obviously, if you're beer person, you're thinking September, but the beer still tastes great in February,
Yeah.
But you can't sell it after October at all.
Well, Steve and I live in a part of the country where it stays hot for late into the season. So when I drink Oktoberfest through October, even some in November, we don't care because it's still not cold yet. Hell, it's been hot for 7 months.
That's funny. Yep. I don't even think about that. That's funny.
We're not ready for stout season yet when November rolls around.
Yeah, this is almost the end of my stout season.
That's definitely a thing in Colorado, like the seasonality of the beer styles and what consumer preferences, including my own. I definitely, the fall turns browner beers, the winter turns blacker beers. There's no doubt about it. And and we see it in the tasting room. It's it's real.
When we had Emily on, we asked her, we said, if a brewery did 3 marketing things well, what would they be? And one of the things she said was, and I'm quoting, perfect your website and accept that it's never really finished. Your website is perfected.
It's fun. It's fun.
It is fun, and I guarantee it's continually updated because it's so cool. It's comic book style, comic book theme kind of thing. Can you describe it? It's very interactive. I was on it today, and I kept jumping around like, this is a lot of fun.
I appreciate that. A lot of the thanks for that goes out to some friends from a marketing agency that they were dear friends before I knew there was a marketing agency involved, but out in Philadelphia called Red Tedimer. And they helped us create that website and the style of it back when we first built our world headquarters here in 2008. And then in-house, our graphics person, Kara, she's maintained it ever since. So it's not easy to keep a website that's foundation is that old. It's very difficult to keep updated. But I have a hard time letting go of the style of our website. I don't want it to change.
It's got a lot of that black and white you were talking about, and you showed on that record earlier. It's got a lot of that around the border and stuff. I love it.
It's funny. It's a lot of like the verbiage and the text, that we wrote however long ago. It's kind of fun. Like just the story stuff is all pretty fun.
The story's great. There's something on there. It's called, bear with me, I got it here. The Legion of Ska. And it's got a total comic book vibe. It's like you've got heroes and you've got villains. And the heroes are you guys. And the villains, I guess, is kind of like corporate America kind of thing.
Yeah. So here's the actual comic book.
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
That's the True Blonde character.
And there's True Blonde, yes.
Yeah, and Pinstripe, he's the skeleton that's in the pinstripe suit. And he is the CEO of the Rotgutson International Beverage Corporation. which at the time was Budweiser.
Okay.
And, and so the whole thing takes place, and the showdown at the end of the comic book is in the 10-pin bowling alley. And all of our friends that help us defeat Pinstripe and his thugs, that is the Legion of Ska. And it's pretty funny. Like, you could kind of see, here's like the whole fight scene in the bowling alley.
Yes.
In fact, right
I
here.
love that it's a whole thing.
Yeah,
Full page motherfucking fight scene.
It's like an old Batman comic book.
It kind of is. It's like pow, crunch,
Totally.
Kabam!
Kabam!
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of inside jokes in this place. There's inside jokes on our labels within our comic book, and I mean, even like our employee handbook has inside jokes and stuff. We kind of touched on it earlier, but we try to keep that flowing through a lot of the stuff we do. And so the website's like, it's just the perfect medium for that, to kind of tie it all together and give people a taste of it. And you can kind of tell, there's some fun going on, and there's a lot of story here and there, and it's all pretty much completely embellished, but there's little bits and pieces of truth here and there.
Sure, there's a point to some of it, right? There's really a point here. Like if you click on each individual character, like if you click on True Blonde, like it jumps to that person, then she says something, right? Is there's a statement or something, and each of you have that. Even the villains have something if you click on them. I eat the little guy for breakfast kind of thing. I, I think it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Awesome. I appreciate that. That's good to hear.
Dave,
really
I
is.
swear, man, what's really great about you is that you were like what, your late teens when you're going through the brewing process and starting Scots and now, and I could see you now to then, and you haven't really changed. You still
That's
have
kind
that.
of the point I was trying to make. I don't feel like
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, I can tell that. I mean, we have felt you through this entire podcast episode. I mean, from the evolution of everything that's happened to you, you haven't changed at all. It's great.
Amazing. That's funny to hear.
Yeah. What PJ O'Thugly and Knuckles? Those are
Two key thugs. Two key thugs of the pinstripes.
You gotta see these. You gotta go to the page. You gotta see. It's hilarious. It's great. You can't even describe it. You got to look at it and see. It's
SkaBrewing.com is the website.
It is. And not only that, there's a whole lot of good stuff on the story so far is great. You even touched on it. You said something about Dave and Bill learned that while they loved gulping down good beer, they weren't yet old enough to buy it. You touched on that earlier in the episode. Yeah, it's absolutely. It's I love this. There's a lot of good information on here, like real information. There's a lot of fun stuff on here too. Go check out the website. It's great. Something else I want to touch on before we don't want to keep you forever. We got a million things, but sustainability. You guys are really into sustainability. You've got a really nice page on your website about it. You guys, there's something really cool about it. You can collars. You went from plastic to paperboard. Was cool. You're composting. You're reducing waste. But one of my favorite things, I've never seen this before, is you use recycled jeans in the walls for insulation. Talk about that. Are they literally just widen up jeans up there? Are they ground down? How does that work?
Yeah, when we built the brewery that we're currently in 2008, there were no LEED certified buildings in Durango at the time, and we wanted to be the first LEED certified building. And so one of the, we did a lot of the stuff, but unfortunate part when you're a small business owner trying to grow, to become LEED certified, you have to pay a commissioning agent to basically just stand there that doesn't live here, so you're paying for his hotel and his food, and he's just signing off saying, yeah, you did the things you said you were going to do. Very expensive. And we were like, we're not doing that, so we didn't keep that guy. We still went forward with most of the things we wanted to do to become LEED certified. We didn't get the certification though. But one of the things we did amongst quite a few different things was, and this was just cool because I hadn't even heard of this before, but the R factor, how insulating insulation can be in a wall. I don't know a lot about that, but recycled denim, blue jeans, has a great R factor, like as good as fiberglass, if not better, I think. And so all of our walls are insulated with recycled denim, which was interesting because when we actually got it, and it clear as day was just recycled denim, and I think it was a mix of scraps from jeans being made and also jeans that were recycled. So yeah, that's what all of our walls are insulated with. If they're
on
not
my bingo card tonight, I would have not ever have guessed that denim would be good insulation.
Yeah. And I don't, I'm glad you guys just brought that up because it's one of those things I've probably taken for granted and haven't thought about in a little while. But I wonder like how far, because that was in 2008. So how far advanced that has come and what other materials they might be using now. And if denim is still a good, has that insulating factor and that R factor and if there's better products now, if we were ever to build something else.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it was, It's cool. Like if you cut right into my office wall right here, jeans would fall out.
She's just falling out.
And there's some
Maybe-
Levi's.
Maybe a few coins might come along with it.
Yeah.
Just
Who
spilling
knows
out.
what else will fall out? But I guarantee some jeans.
Yes.
Look, there's some brewery recipes in the back pocket.
Brewery recipes. Couple of grocery lists.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I got a couple fun things I want to end on if you got a couple extra minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. What's the most punk rock thing that's ever happened in the brewery?
Oh God.
He's combing through the stories right now.
Yeah, there's because that can mean, that's pretty subjective. I can think of I can think about a time when we had a band that showed up kind of unannounced. They were a ska band called Warsaw. This is in our old brewery, our original brewery. The tasting room was very small. It was actually an old lab that coincidentally worked out great for us. But those guys kind of showed up one day unannounced. They were an Arizona ska band and they toured a lot in the Southwest. And they ended up playing in the tasting room, which wasn't, it's the size of my office, our old tasting room. And they had a lot of people and they weren't playing their regular instruments. They were playing brewery stuff. They were all really good. They can all play a lot of different instruments. They're all multi-talented. And I was singing and this is at like 2:00 in the morning. A couple good stories like that, but this one's a good one. And it was like, yeah. And I there's a picture that sometimes I see on the internet when they're talking about this band that's in our tasting room that same night. It's like, particularly when it's this one guy's birthday, I see it pop up on some ska websites, but there was probably 10 people playing instruments really well and way past when we were legally allowed to be doing that. And it was packed and everyone was, but people were playing pots and pans and some instruments. And I remember a recorder and it was like, and I remember like handprints the next day on the walls and people like were climbing, everyone was on top of the bar. And it was one of the funnest nights of my life. Took some time to get over in the next few days, but it wasn't legal. Nobody got hurt. So I think that's a big thing in punk rock. You're always trying to
punk
take care of
rock for
everybody
sure.
as crazy as you get. And it was wild. It was completely wild, but nobody got hurt. We had a great time and everybody lived to at least do it to some extent another day. And that was good because that was another thing I was thinking about, some of the old pictures, but we had a few questionable things as far as the legality of what we were doing in not only at our own place, but around town way back in the day. And then, so I think there's some things like that, where you're just pushing the limits of everything. And
well, the good news is the statute of limitations have run out on that.
yeah,
You hope.
I'm not too afraid to talk about it.
We won't tell anybody.
Well, that's definitely punk rock. That is definitely punk rock. That certainly fit the bill. If you had a walk-up song, or if Ska Brewing had a walk-up song, what would it be?
Not Jamie's on a vacation far away. No, I'm just thinking the Rocky. But no, I don't know. That's a great question. God, I've never thought about that, which is amazing that nobody's ever asked me that before.
You know what that means then, Dave? We're going to have to bring you back on again, and you have a lot of time to think about it.
Well, if he throws one out here, we're going to use as one of the posts.
I know. I'm trying to think like of all the okay. Yeah. I think the Toasters, we actually used to use this on that website. I don't think it's on there anymore, but the Toasters, and this is a fun story too. They're celebrating, I think, their 45th year, as they were original New York ska, so part of that third wave of ska I was talking about. Well-known ska band, and they've invited me to go on tour with them this fall in Poland and Germany, neither of which country I've ever been to, but they have a song called "Don't Let the Bastards Grind You Down," and I think that, and there's no doubt about it, that's the walk-up song. Don't
All
let
right.
the bastard grind you down
That's awesome.
by the
Okay,
toast.
good.
Yeah, you
You
look
will
that
hear
one up.
that.
Great song.
I'm going to end on this. What's one thing people have to experience to truly understand Ska Brewing?
I think actually being at our anniversary party in the fall, it's a good. You get to taste all the beers. You get to feel the vibe of the brewery and all the people that work here and the people that really enjoy the beer and the music. It's kind of a scene. It's usually mostly ska. It's a little faster and harder and some more punk rock this year. With the bands that we've got lined up, it's September 12th. It's not quite sold out yet, but it always does sell out. But that party is really indicative of the whole character and the vibe of who we are and the beers we make and the people we are and the people that work here. And it's a really good way to get a taste of what this place has been all about for 31 years.
Awesome. That's awesome. Steve, you got anything else for Dave?
It can't get anything better than that.
I
That's-
know. What
I
a
mean, I don't
great-
have anything. I have so many other questions, but
I
you know
know.
what? We like to save questions for another episode. And you know what? Now we're going to twist your arm and say, will you come back again?
I'd love to come back.
Oh,
Yeah,
you were-
you guys are a lot of fun.
you were great,
Yeah,
man.
it
You were
was great too because you did a good amount of research for being in a place that can't get our beer on a regular basis. You know, I appreciate that. So I appreciate you guys for really digging into things before we ever even got started.
Absolutely.
I
We
have
try. We
loved
try to
every
do a
minute.
little digging.
I've loved every minute of this episode, man. This has been fantastic.
That's
Great,
awesome. Is there
great.
anything you want to end on? Anything we didn't touch on? You wanna put out there?
No, I mean, go Avalanche. We talked about that. No, it would be great to see you guys. You should maybe see if you can make your way out here for one of our anniversary parties. Even
Be
this
fun.
We're
year.
gonna have to do that. I was telling Emily, like, I go to GABF a lot, but I know it's almost another world getting to where you guys are. So
Yeah.
we may have to plan a little something maybe one of these days and kind of do both. Possibly.
It'd
Maybe
be
next
fun.
time I'm the one time I was in Nashville, I went down early. I ran the rock and roll marathon like it was like the day before the craft brewers conference started, and
Okay.
I swore I would be back to Nashville. So if I'm getting back there to do, whether it's to run or for some other reason, I'll look you guys up and definitely see if we can go out and have a couple beers.
We will show you a good time. Promise.
Awesome. I
We'll
need a
find
local
time.
to show me around.
Yes.
We'll
yeah.
find
You
time
want
for
that?
you. We'll find a location to record too. That would be an absolute blast.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool.
Well, Dave, thanks for joining us. This was a freaking blast.
It was.
Awesome. I had a lot of fun. Thank you guys.
Ska Brewing, West Coast IPA.
Cheers.
Cheers, you guys.
Cheers. Thank you. Brewery Underground
All right.
Podcast.